Welcome to Talking Telecoms. I'm Annie Turner, editor of Mobile Europe, and today I'm going to be talking about preparing telcos for the mobile commerce revolution with RAJAT WANCHOO, and he is Vice President and Worldwide Head of Industry Partnerships for Telcos and OEMs at InMobi. Welcome. Just before we get started, though, it's worth noting that this is a kind of follow-on from a popular webinar we hosted back in May with RAJAT, who was then joined by James Barnett, who is Three UK's paid product executive. So you'll find that webinar on Mobile Europe's website under events and in the on-demand section, and we're www.mobileeurope.co.uk. Perhaps we could start proceedings by looking at the revenue pressure on telcos and also at how digital commerce and PayTech industry are opening up new avenues of revenue for them.
Sure. I think this is a very, very interesting topic, a topic that has been exploding for almost last 2 to 3 years. I think sadly because of COVID, because everybody kind of went on mobile for almost everything, being at home, but it has led to an expedited end state for us, which probably was supposed to happen somewhere a couple of years down the line, but is in front of us right now. See, today, mobile commerce and app commerce, if you look collectively at these two large buckets, we have around $250 billion of annual economy that gets transacted on a user's phone, user's smartphone through mobile commerce and app commerce. Sadly, all of this economy is currently flowing over the top of the telco and the OEM both. Infrastructure providers, whether it's a connectivity provider like a carrier or the device provider like an OEM, they both don't have or had any hooks to tap into this $200-300 billion commerce that is happening on the smartphones. If you look at the history, just go back 3 decades ago, the cash economy was taken over by the credit card economy in the 90s, right? The credit card economy was taken over by the click economy in the 2000s, where the websites, e-commerce started happening. Few years ago, the click economy has really been taken over by the swipe or the tap economy on the mobile phone. And this is where the money flow is going from physical to digital and from digital to very much containerized onto a smartphone of the user, pretty much for everything. And we realized that this is no longer trivial for somebody to ignore, especially the annual revenue that flows on a smartphone in the apps on a user's device is more than the collective annual revenue that telcos across continental Europe are making today on any value-added services, collectively, across all telcos, I'm saying. So we are here to discuss a possibility where what MasterCard and Visa did to the swipe economy on the physical card, can telcos do that on the tap economy on the phone? And that is where we think the industry is excited about the new solutions that are coming out, much with InMobi as well. And we think this is where telcos should definitely look at, along with the OEMs.
Well, that sounds like a very compelling commercial argument when you're talking about more money is passing through mobile phones than the income of all the European telcos put together. It's quite a mind-boggling idea, really. So, from that state that's happening now, how do we get to telcos making money out of it instead of just enabling it? How do they maximize that opportunity?
Any telcos need 2 things, fundamentally, just 2 things to be able to get into the bandwagon. One is the infrastructure and other is the marketplace, really, in simplest terms. By infrastructure, I mean telcos need to have an infrastructure by which they can plug themselves into this app commerce economy, whereby they can, number one, enable the commerce, and number second, they can collect the data so that they can make some sense of the data, commercialize that data, and make it available as revenue back to the consumers. Number second is the marketplace, which means you need to have the pipes to allow the buyers and sellers to come together. Telcos did not have any of them grounds up built for an app commerce economy. They did not. They have a vast infrastructure in place and the BSS or the billing and the charging infrastructure in place for a long time for billing and charging voice and data and vast services that come along with it. Nothing really looked at the very separate walled garden that was the app commerce economy. It needs a very different kind of infrastructure. Number second, if you look at building a marketplace, this is something that decides whether you will run a profitable commerce business or not. If you are using somebody else's marketplace as a telco to essentially just give them your subscriber data and they are then monetizing it, you are essentially in a very odd spectrum. Number one, you have trust issues with your consumers, so don't do that. Number second, you have revenue issues because the marketplace, the exchange, which is where the users and the buyers and the sellers come together, the take rate of the exchange today, the third-party exchange, is of the order that significantly eats into any meaningful bottom line that a carrier expects to make. And remember, whatever revenue carrier makes on these value-added services, a carrier wants to provide some part of this value back to the consumers as well, in the form of better devices, better services, rewards, cashbacks, and a bunch of other things, which I would say industry is kind of spoiled today, that everybody expects. If I'm providing you some information, I need some reward out of it. You can't just tell me this is because you're trying to subsidize free internet. This logic doesn't work. So I think the infrastructure, the marketplace, and the third thing is the device container itself, which is something InMobi keeps very close to our hearts, which means, see, ultimately the consumers are the ones, the people who have bought the connection from a carrier, who bought a Samsung device. They are the ones who are at the epicenter of this transaction, buying and selling. It's their revenue dollars flowing into the system. So they need to have a very secure container onto the device through which they can enable or they can participate into this frictionless commerce. But that container needs to be trusted. And not only the container needs to be trusted and secure in terms of data, in terms of their transaction histories, but also that container needs to be able to give the users the actual frictionless experience of transacting, which means your single swipe or single click transaction, whether it's enabled by your Face ID or it's enabled by your fingerprint or it's enabled by your voice or any other secure mechanism, it should be native to the device. And that container should be intelligent enough. I need to tell you, hey, you basically spent, let's say, 300 pounds last month doing X, Y, and Z. This container is able to give you back, let's say, 30 pounds back to you as rewards or cashes or any kind of a soft currency. It could be even a non-fungible token that can be registered on a ledger somewhere on the Telcos blockchain network, or even something that InMobi provides from our own side, but a very secure infrastructure on device and on network. So I think three things: infrastructure, on network, on device, and the marketplace to transact.
Okay, so the infrastructure, what are you talking about in this context? What do you mean? Data centers?
Not necessarily data centers. We're talking about the infrastructure that massively is able to securely transact a user's click or swipe through the carrier's network into a merchant site, and then getting those postbacks back from the merchant site onto the device so that they're available both as a kind of a product purchase postback and also as a reward postback. This necessarily does not only transact over the data center of the carrier. It has a lot of other POPs or point of presences across the e-commerce internet. Because, see, the telco's VAS was always supposed to be a walled garden service provided by the telco's own data center. Here we are talking about the internet economy, which is very decentralized, which is very democratized. So telco's infrastructure needs to be talking to the merchant infrastructure, which could be Amazon or eBay, or let's say a boutique retailer out there. And on the other hand, it needs to be talking to the user's own payment mechanics that are safeguardedly secure on the phone, which is probably your credit card information or your swipe or purchase history information. All of this needs to come together, not necessarily in one data center, but yes, connected in a very secure way across POPs.
And what do you think is preventing telcos from taking the steps you've just described so that they can maximize their returns from mobile commerce?
Yes. I think there are two main challenges that telcos have been facing. One is definitely regulatory challenge. Telcos are really, really very special businesses that are regulated at the core of it. They are a subject of not only privacy, but also of national security interests in various countries. Carrier communications is a very important topic, because of which there are a lot of things that telcos can't do, which open internet companies have been doing and then saying sorry if they've messed up. Telcos really can't do that. So you need to think about this infrastructure grounds up from a telco's perspective. And number second, telcos have not been able to build infrastructure grounds up that was catering to an open internet economy. Telcos were always supposed to be building infrastructure that was very native to the telco and was dealing with whatever services telco is providing in-house to the consumers that are directly connected to a telco's network. It's a first-party relationship. Telcos are never selling anything to a third party, which is a very gray area to be in. As an internet provider using third-party cookies or a bunch of other things, you can actually go and talk to people who are not your consumers today. Telcos never talk to people who are not their consumers. They've never dealt with anybody who's not the subscriber. So I think the legacy infrastructure that has been existing for a long time, almost 30 plus years, never was dealt or meant to be app commerce first infrastructure. And then there have been regulatory pressures on top of it.
Okay, so what your proposition is to attract operators to operate on your hub so that they can trade information with other parties and monetize that. Tell me a little bit about how they can turn that data into a tradable commodity without breaking any regulatory compliance.
Yeah.
So you can't sell the fact that I've bought a pair of shoes on Amazon using my mobile phone, for example, but how could you wrap that data so that it's valuable to somebody else?
Yes. See, there is one very important fact that you mentioned, which is actually a myth also. And I wanted to clarify that very specifically. There is no place in this entire economy of a telco and OEM monetization where we're talking about any kind of data monetization. Data is not getting traded. Data is not getting monetized. What is happening here is using the open internet economy that today exists directly between the user and his apps, or between the user and the websites that the user buys and shops at. Can the carrier or the OEM provide a frictionless container to the user so that user can participate or transact that economy in a secure way on a telco device, on a carrier device, rather going outside on an open internet, getting challenged by fraud issues, bunch of other privacy issues, dealing with parties that he doesn't know. Imagine you're trying to Google a pair of shoes on the browser, and Google gives you a shopping catalog of websites where the shoes could be available. Some of the websites you would know. You recognize those brands as some people you have dealt with in past and you're trusted. There'll be a long tail of websites on the Google search bar that will be companies you've never heard of. Maybe they are far east, maybe they are far west, maybe they are 7 oceans down, and you really don't know who sits behind that domain name. But the users take a leap of faith. They trust it. It's their browser. They click it, they buy something, and they are essentially selling their credit card information to a server that is sitting somewhere which nobody really knows. We want to change that. We are telling a telco, listen, we are going to give you some containers that are secure containers on the device through which a user can still get exposed to the same open internet economy, but he's not transacting directly with the open internet servers. Everything is going from those secure containers on your device onto a secure marketplace, let's say an InMobi or somebody else. And that transaction is completely controlled. Telco sees that transaction in terms of the information. They don't trade that information. They see that, they understand that information. They make better their containers for the users to use it better the next time on the next click. But that frictionless commerce is what the customers are going to pay for. Telcos did not have the infrastructure to enable this, from the device to the data center, which is what we are providing to them. But we are also telling them, listen, get out of this mindset of selling customer information. That is an area nobody has ever been able to successfully deal with, because you're in a very sensitive business. Your business should be to allow frictionless commerce to the consumers, not to take the data and sell it out there.
Okay, so it's about keeping that data safe. I'm still not sure how they're going to commercialize this, though.
Yes, commercialization happens if the telco is able to create a marketplace. Network effects is something that is going to be pivotal in whether this business will scale or not for a carrier. Now, imagine a couple of carriers in UK, for example. You have EE, you have O2, and you have, let's say, 3UK. All these three carriers have their first-party set of consumers out there. Mm-hmm. Now, independently, you can have 10, 20 million consumers who are your first-party customers who are sitting on your connected network today. But unless you bring everything together across the country and achieve a scale that only open internet companies like Amazon or Google or eBay or Facebook have been able to achieve, like really, really significant scale, that advertisers will like to directly come to you as a carrier and will spend their budgets with you, offer you something that is boutique and discreet for your consumers, that your consumers will love, which they can't really find out there because they're getting it through you. And advertisers will love because for that same dollar, they're getting the maximum impressions, they're getting the maximum reach, which is why advertisers need, because everything is tied to take rate, Annie. If I spend $100 out there, I know my take rate is never going to be more than 3 to 4%, which is industry standard, which means I have to just improve the top of the funnel so that I can get to a better bottom of the funnel. And who can give me the scale? I don't want to work with 10 telcos, spread my budgets thin in all 10 telcos, and then try reconciling at the end of the month, every month, and optimize. I want to deal with one large marketplace where multiple telcos can come and pump into that marketplace or plug into that marketplace. But I want one marketplace to talk to. Telcos may not be able to build that marketplace at large, at scale, because the consumer connections are very democratized across the country, like the UK example we talked about. Second thing is, any marketplace, any two-sided marketplace that you set up, it suffers from both pros and cons of network effects. Pros are, once the network effects are in place, once the advertisers are already plugged into the marketplace, consumers will come and they'll buy. More consumers will come, more advertisers will come. Problem is cold start. Who's going to come first? The consumers or the advertisers? Or the telco is going to basically put in a lot of cash, then creating, which we call as paperware deals for the consumers, funding the consumers' initial transactions so that, advertisers also latch on. We have broken that by saying, listen, there's a large marketplace that InMobi runs today. We reach around 2 billion smartphones globally, which is a massive, massive scale, span the globe. This marketplace is already running. We have several tons of thousands of advertisers plugged in. We have several tens of thousands of publishers, the app developers who have our SDK plugged in. Just take this marketplace and let's plug into the telco commerce containers into this marketplace. And let us give consumers a frictionless way to tap into a marketplace that is already thriving. And once one telco joins the marketplace, other telco joins the marketplace, we can have a boutique nature of a third-party transactions that telcos can benefit from.
Okay, now I looked at some research from TM Forum recently, and the operators were asked as part of the survey on digital transformation about what they aspire to become. Very few wanted to become platform-based players, which I think is what we're talking about here. They all wanted to be digital service providers. And the reasoning behind that is that they want to keep hold tight of their customers. Whereas if they don't own a platform and are just one player on a platform, I think there's always a big fear of not owning the customer, losing that first party relationship. So how would you overcome that?
It's a very important thing. It's a very important thing. In this entire app commerce strategy, telcos need to own the platform. If the telcos lease the platform from somebody else, which in most cases could be, let's say, a large open internet company, only the platform will get stronger and stronger with every transaction. Telcos will just be one plumbed pipe. And I can tell you, after some point in time, platform is so smart and intelligent that telcos may no longer be needed to essentially drive those transactions. The first pivotal rule of thumb.
So you mean it might be a case of, gosh, we've got all your data now. Thank you very much. Goodbye. We don't need you anymore.
Yes, that is what is happening today. Even with the OEMs, if you look at some of the large OEMs who have one of the most fundamentally beautiful devices that are coming out there, and they spend a lot of time in R&D providing those devices out there, OEMs are putting some specialized software onto the devices so that frictionless mobile-first commerce can happen on the devices native. You look at your device, you give your voice biometrics, and it's able to transact, verify you. It's more trusted than actually going out on a browser, trying to deal with a third-party cookie in an unsecure environment and giving you credit card information. This is R&D put in by the OEMs. Carriers can launch onto the same infrastructure that OEMs have built, but where is the marketplace behind that? Now, if telco and the OEM latches onto somebody else's marketplace, an open internet marketplace, then only the marketplace is getting stronger with every passing day. We are fundamentally changing that by saying, listen, you need to own the marketplace. So we are going to give you the marketplace, which you will own. Your first-party consumers are at the epicenter of this marketplace, which will always remain your first-party consumers. How? Because we are giving you certain secure device containers that are going directly onto the device of your first-party consumers. And that container that we are giving to, let's say, an EE or a 3UK or Orange or a Vodafone, that is very specific to the consumers of those devices, which means everything that happens in that container, the parent connectivity provider, ISP, whether it's Vodafone or Orange, they know, they control, and they can gateway that. They are not in an open internet environment, but the consumer gets the same benefits of an open internet economy, an app commerce economy, in a secure way. Some of the times consumers may not even know they are in a secure container transacting something in a friction-free way. End goal is they should love it. It should be safe and secure, and it should scale for the carrier and for the OEM.
So really what you're saying, I think, is the more operators there are on your platform, the better, because you get network effects for all the other members of that ecosystem, including their customers, but they retain the first party relationship.
Yes.
They're not losing it. So they get the scale without giving up the thing that's probably the most precious to them.
Yes.
Can we just talk a little bit about compliance and privacy, which particularly here in Europe is a very hot topic. So how does using your platform for secure transactions, how does that work with compliance? Is that an element that you look after?
Yes, that is an element that we completely look after. It is a baggage you can't give to anybody else, Annie. And you can't give it to the telcos. No. The moment telcos open up their systems for an external value-added service to come in, that value-added service needs to take the complete onus of privacy, security, and this is a growing beast. It's a very organic beast. Policies keep changing every few months, and the systems and the infrastructure needs to take care of, which is what we do. We learned it through our own battle scars that we have got in the industry over the last many, many years. Being mobile first only and not done anything outside of the mobile device itself. It's a very unique environment. Thankfully, it's more secure than a web environment, but more importantly, it is highly regulated, which means every piece of information, every piece of data, every piece of touch and a click that a user does or executes on a device, that is first-party proprietary information of the user. User consents to share it with the carrier, and this is where it ends. It should not go anywhere outside of these two parties. That is what has to be completely maintained. And number second, if you look at the latest regulations by CCPA or COPA or even GDPR, or even if you go to Middle East, you look at TRA regulations, you realize that everybody wants to give users the fundamental control or the right to participate in this frictionless commerce. When a user goes to the web browser and tries to buy something, he knows somebody will drop a cookie to his browser to track the user. Users have not been told enough of that. The latest, the consent management policies and guidelines came into picture, but we have built that grounds up on a mobile phone, which there is just no way the user does not know what's going on. But as an infrastructure provider, we are the ones who need to manage it and maintain it on behalf of the carrier.
And how much is the burden of connecting with and managing relationships with this big ecosystem you're describing? How much is the pain of that taken away for operators? How much is their responsibility to leverage that ecosystem, or do they just sit on your platform and it all happens for them?
Yeah, it's a big pain area. What I mentioned, the cold start for the network platform is a big pain area. 9 out of 10 providers may not even get over the hump for the cold start unless you actually flush in a lot of money for a couple of years to actually pump and create those deals or those situations for both buyers and sellers to come together. It has taken InMobi good 12 years to set up this marketplace. It's not even funny. We started in 2007 when we did not even have Android as an operating system, for example. We still had Apple iOS was just launched in 2007.
Oh, yes.
On software. And we started our journey then, and we have kind of navigated in creating software that was just built for this unique situation. We find ourselves lucky that mobile phones have become at the center of exchange of all kind of content and commerce. And we got lucky. It could be a different screen as well. You never know. But it is mobile phones. So I think companies like us who have invested in this infrastructure marketplace, we came very lucky. We have today relationships with around several tens of thousands of brands and advertisers who are plugged directly onto our mobile commerce marketplace. So when a carrier comes in, day one, opens the door, plumps into our marketplace, he sees tens and thousands of brands that you would know, your e-commerce brands, your shopping brands, your gaming brands, your automotive brands, your luxury brands, all are already there transacting. They were transacting directly with the app publishers currently. Now they know that they have a better way of transacting through a aggregated gateway, which is a carrier. They would extremely love the fact that large carriers are coming onto this marketplace, and carriers have a minimum leakage in revenue share because they are dealing directly with the brands with first hop as just one hop in between, which is InMobi, rather than unknown amount of hops which happen in open internet commerce. And number second, it's a very trusted marketplace where the users know who their connectivity provider is. The connectivity provider has deployed the container securely on the user's device, so they know what's getting transacted inside and there. And the brands know that they are not dealing with bots. They are dealing with real people behind real carriers. We all saw what happened in case of Twitter. We have all seen kind of 50% of the traffic out there is fraud, 50% of it. It's not even funny. So everybody loves this three-sided marketplace, a trusted marketplace that comes together.
So this is really about how to get instant scale.
Yes.
From the, which usually, as you say, takes several years.
Several
and
years.
I guess an awful lot of people who launch such platforms just never succeed, as you say, don't get over the hump.
Yeah.
Okay, if you had one piece of advice for an operator who is thinking of taking this route, what would it be?
One piece of advice that we want to give to all our friends out there, OEMs and carriers both, is don't fight the internet. There is just no fun fighting the internet. Don't try to create media companies, media outlets, and data islands, thinking that your media outlet or your data island will be better, sharper, cleaner than something else out there existing in the internet. Somebody will try to innovate. This is a very fluid economy. Instead of competing with the internet, just be the gateway to the internet. There are some beautiful pieces of infrastructure that have been created out in the internet. Problem is, consumers really don't know when they talk to an end pop, a point of presence, to transact something, whether it is real or not, and how many hops is the internet taking for him to reach that end transaction. What's the leakage there? If you are able to be the gateway to the internet, bring everything together in a trusted way for the consumers and brands, you will solve a very large problem. Don't fight the internet, just be a gateway to the internet is what we would say.
Okay, and we mentioned at the beginning that you mentioned that because of COVID and lockdown and all that stuff that happened, really you're probably 2 years ahead of where you expected to be with the kind of mobile first commerce. And I'm just wondering now, we're looking, we hope, to be past COVID. Do you think the habits that developed, the heavy use of mobile for transactions, do you think that will continue? You don't see us going back to our old ways?
No ways. It's growing. Memory muscle is providing a big boost to this entire economy. People who started loving the fact that they can order food sitting at home, or they can just rent movies sitting at home, or do many other things. Infrastructure is catching up to that, but the memory muscle is holding them tight. We did some very interesting launches in US with some of the carriers in the fall of last year. And we have seen the data from our platform and the engagement rate on our platform. It was high when it started in fall of last year. But if you look, it's almost been 1 year from then, and engagement rates are kind of going up and up and up and up with every passing month, cumulatively and also individually. Because I think people, once you give people a secure, frictionless way of engaging with something, they would love it. Give them a tap or a swipe, they would love it. But most important fact is that the backend infrastructure was never strong enough to deal with this rapid rise which happened in last 2 years. So the end consumer apps are still getting better with every passing day. People are investing. The infrastructure that supports the transactions, billing, charging, rating infrastructure, it's coming there. But still, we would say this all is kind of getting better with every passing day and is becoming more lucrative for everybody.
Okay, so you just think this is going to grow and grow and grow. And if the operators want to get in on the act, they shouldn't try and reinvent the wheel themselves.
No. 8% annual growth rate on an existing $250 billion annual economy. We are talking adding another, let's say, 20 billion year on year, even by simple math on this economy. So if you invest now, you probably are at the right track, I would say, at least for next few years, till we move on from mobile phones to something more cool and more sleek.
Well, okay. Rajat, that was great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for having us here. Have a good one.